The notification ping cut through the silence of my garage workshop, like a blade through paper. 2 in the morning, and I was hunched over my laptop debugging code for a client's smart home system. Insomnia had become my closest companion these past few months. Ever since things with Marin started feeling wrong, her phone sat on my workbench, forgotten after she'd stumbled upstairs 3 hours ago, reeking of expensive wine and someone else's cologne. The screen glowed with a message from Porter Keller, her boss at Hollis Luxury Marketing. "She's mine now. Don't wait for her." I stared at those words, feeling something cold and calculating settle into my chest. Not heartbreak. That would come later, maybe. Right now, all I felt was the sharp clarity of a man who'd just been handed the truth on a silver platter. My fingers moved across the phone screen, typing a response from Marin's number. "Keep her. We're done." The reply came instantly. Smart man. She was getting tired of playing house. Anyway, I set the phone down and looked around my workshop. 15 years of marriage, and it all came down to a text message at 2 o'clock in the morning. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd built my entire business around making homes smarter, more secure, more connected. Yet, I'd missed the most obvious security breach in my own house. My name is Brooks Carvin, and I run a small but successful construction tech company here in Millbrook, Maine. We install smart home systems, security networks, and automation for wealthy clients who want their houses to think for them. It's good work, honest work, and it's made me comfortable enough to afford the renovated Victorian that Marin and I call home, or used to call home. I opened my laptop and logged into our joint banking account. $43,000 in checking, another $120,000 in savings. Money we'd accumulated together, though most of it came from my business. Marin's PR job paid well, but not well enough to support her shopping habits and constant girls' trips to Boston. Those trips made sense now. I initiated a transfer, moving everything into my personal business account. The one Marin didn't know about, didn't have access to, and couldn't touch. My lawyer had advised me to set it up years ago for tax purposes. Tonight, it served a different function entirely. Next, I accessed our credit accounts. Marin had 3 cards linked to my business credit line. I canceled them all, then sent a fraud alert to the credit agencies. Let her try to explain that to Porter when her cards got declined tomorrow. The smart home system came next. Every lock, every camera, every automated feature in our house ran through a central hub that I'd programmed myself. I changed every access code, revoked Marin's mobile permissions, and set up a new user profile for myself. She'd wake up tomorrow, unable to open her own garage door. But I wasn't done. I pulled up the GPS tracking app linked to Marin's car. The BMW was parked at the Ocean View Hotel 12 miles outside town. Classy. I used the app to start the engine remotely, then drove it using the automated parking feature to a muddy lot behind Murphy's Seafood, a place with no security cameras and a reputation for car break-ins. By 3 a.m., I dismantled 15 years of shared life, with the efficiency of a man uninstalling a faulty operating system. Every joint account, every shared password, every piece of digital infrastructure that connected us gone. I was transferring the last of our shared investment portfolio when I heard the front door open. Voices drifted through the house. Marin's laugh, high and nervous. A man's deeper tone, confident and smug. They were coming here to my house to gloat, maybe, or to collect her things. Perhaps Porter wanted to mark his territory like some suburban alpha male. I saved my work and closed the laptop. Then I walked upstairs to greet my wife and her new boyfriend. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. They were in the living room when I appeared. Marin sat on our leather couch, still wearing the black dress she'd put on for her work dinner 8 hours ago. Porter stood behind her, one hand possessively on her shoulder. He was exactly what I'd expected. Tall, silver-haired, expensive suit. Even at 3 o'clock in the morning, the kind of man who wore confidence like cologne. "Brooks," Marin said, her voice catching. "We need to talk." "No," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "We really don't." Porter stepped forward, extending his hand like we were meeting at a networking event. "Brooks, right? I'm Porter Keller. I think there's been a misunderstanding." I looked at his hand, but didn't take it. "No misunderstanding." "You sent a text?" I replied. "Transaction complete?" His smile faltered slightly. "Look, this is awkward for everyone, but Marin and I are perfect for each other," I finished. "Congratulations. I hope you'll be very happy together." Marin stood up, tears starting to form in her eyes. Real ones, I thought. Though with her, they were hard to distinguish from the performance variety. "Brooks, please. This isn't how I wanted you to find out." "How did you want me to find out?" "Anniversary card, skywriting." "Don't be cruel," she whispered. "Cruel?" I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "Marin, I've been nothing but kind to you. For 15 years, I've been patient, supportive, understanding. I worked 60-hour weeks to pay for your lifestyle while you told me you were building your career. Turns out, you were building something else entirely." Porter cleared his throat. "Look, Brooks, I know this is difficult, but sometimes these things just happen. People grow apart. Maybe we can work out some kind of arrangement." "What kind of arrangement?" "Well, the house, the finances. I'm sure we can come to an understanding that works for everyone." I almost smiled. "You want to buy me out? Make this easy for everyone?" "Something like that." "That's thoughtful of you, Porter." "Really? There's just one small problem." "What's that?" I pulled out my phone and showed them the banking app. "Zero balance in our joint accounts. There's nothing left to buy." The color drained from Marin's face. "What did you do?" "I secured my assets. Seemed like the prudent thing to do given the circumstances." Porter's friendly demeanor cracked. "You can't just steal joint funds. That's perfectly legal when you're protecting yourself from fraud, which is exactly what this is." I gestured between them. "How long has this been going on? 6 months? A year?" Marin's silence was answer enough. The trips to Boston, the late work meetings, the new lingerie I never got to see. I shook my head. "You've been spending my money to finance your affair." "That's fraud, Porter. Ask your lawyer." "You're being ridiculous," Marin said, finding her voice. "Half of everything in those accounts is mine." "Was yours past tense?" "You forfeited your claim when you decided to shop for a replacement husband on company time." I walked to the front door and opened it. "You should both leave now. It's late and I have work in the morning." Neither of them moved. "Brooks," Marin said, her voice taking on the manipulative tone I'd learned to recognize over the years. "You're upset. I understand that. But we can work through this. We've been together for 15 years. That has to mean something. It meant everything to me. Apparently, it meant nothing to you. That's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed again. "You want to talk about fair?" Fair would have been a conversation. Fair would have been counseling or separation or any of a dozen other options that didn't involve you lying to my face while you planned your exit strategy. Porter stepped closer, and I could see the calculation in his eyes. He was trying to figure out his next move, probably wondering how much this was going to cost him. Look, Brooks, I think we got off on the wrong foot. Why don't we sit down and discuss this like adults? I am discussing it like an adult. Adults protect themselves when they discover they've been betrayed. Adults don't let themselves get taken advantage of by people they trusted. I looked at Maren. Really looked at her maybe for the first time in months. She was beautiful. I'd give her that. 33 years old and still turning heads wherever she went. But beauty without loyalty was just decoration. And I'd never been much for decorating. The locks are changed, I said quietly. The accounts are closed. Your credit cards are canceled. Your car is parked behind Murphy's Seafood, assuming it hasn't been stripped for parts yet. You can't do this to me, she whispered. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm protecting myself from you. There's a difference. Porter pulled out his phone. I'm calling my lawyer. Good idea. Call mine too while you're at it. His name is David Chen, and he specializes in fraud cases. I'm sure you two will have a lot to discuss. The silence stretched between us, heavy and final. Outside, I could hear the wind picking up, carrying the salt smell of the ocean and the promise of rain. A storm was coming. How appropriate. Finally, Maren stood up. This isn't over, Brooks. Yes, I said, stepping aside so they could pass. It is. They left without another word. Porter's arm around Maren's shoulders as they walked into the night. I watched from the window as they realized her car wasn't in the driveway. Saw Porter make a phone call, probably to a taxi company. When their headlights disappeared down the street, I went back to my workshop and opened my laptop. I had more work to do. I didn't sleep. Instead, I spent the remaining hours before dawn researching Porter Keller and planning my next moves. The internet was a gold mine of information for someone who knew where to look. And I'd been working with digital systems long enough to know all the right places. Porter's LinkedIn profile painted the picture of a successful executive. 15 years at Hollis Luxury Marketing, the last 5 as senior vice president, divorced 3 years ago, though the settlement details were sealed. He lived in a downtown penthouse, drove a Tesla, and belonged to the Harbor Club, the kind of place where membership cost more than most people's annual salary. What interested me more were the business filings. Hollis Luxury had been struggling lately, losing several major clients to competitors. There were rumors of internal restructuring, possible layoffs. Porter's position might not be as secure as he pretended. I made coffee and watched the sunrise through my kitchen window. The house felt different now, like a weight had been lifted from its foundation. Or maybe that was just me, finally seeing clearly after months of willful blindness. My phone buzzed. Gary Linwood, my oldest friend and the owner of the Harborm Tavern downtown. You're up early, he said when I answered. Never went to bed. What's your excuse? Inventory. Listen, I just had the strangest thing happen. Maren called looking for you. Said your phone was going straight to voicemail. I glanced at my phone. I'd blocked her number around 4 a.m. Did she say what she wanted? Something about being locked out of the house. She sounded pretty upset. I bet she did. There was a pause. Gary had known me long enough to read between the lines. Everything okay, Brooks? Everything's fine. Actually, everything's better than it's been in months. Want to talk about it? Maybe later. I've got some business to take care of first. After I hung up, I drove to the bank. My business account manager, Linda Walsh, was already at her desk despite the early hour. She'd been handling my finances for 10 years, and she knew better than to ask too many questions when I requested unusual services. I need to set up a trust account, I told her. Something completely separate from my personal and business finances. Any particular reason? Asset protection. I have a feeling I'm going to need some financial insulation in the coming weeks. She nodded and pulled out the paperwork. While she prepared the documents, I transferred another $50,000 into the new account. Money that would be completely invisible to anyone trying to track my assets. Next stop was my lawyer's office. David Chen had handled my business incorporation and several contract disputes over the years. He was smart, discreet, and had a reputation for aggressive representation when necessary. "You look terrible," he said when I walked into his office. "Long night. I need to discuss divorce proceedings." His eyebrows went up slightly. "I'm sorry to hear that. What are the circumstances?" I told him everything. The text messages, the affair, the financial moves I'd already made. He listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on his legal pad. "You've been thorough," he said when I finished. Almost suspiciously thorough. I work with security systems. Being thorough is part of the job. The asset transfers were legal, assuming you can prove fraudulent use of joint funds. I can prove it. Credit card records, hotel receipts, restaurant charges, all on dates. When she told me she was working late or visiting her sister. Good. What about the house? It's in my name only. I bought it before we got married and she never contributed to the mortgage payments. Even better. Maine is not a community property state, so you should be able to retain separate property acquired before marriage. He leaned back in his chair. What's your goal here, Brooks? Quick settlement. Scorched earth. I thought about Porter's smug smile, about Marin's casual betrayal, about 15 years of my life that had apparently meant nothing to the person I'd trusted most. Scorched earth, I said. He smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Then we're going to get along just fine. I spent the rest of the morning at my office, a converted warehouse space where I kept my equipment and ran my business operations. I had 3 employees, all good people who deserved to know their jobs were secure despite whatever chaos was about to unfold in my personal life. Take the day off, I told them. All of you paid leave. I've got some personal business to handle. They didn't argue. Small-town gossip traveled fast, and I was sure word of last night's drama had already started making the rounds. Alone in my office, I began phase 2 of my plan. Marin's professional email account was linked to several of our shared digital services, cloud storage, streaming accounts, even our home security system. I'd set most of them up myself using my business credentials for billing purposes. Now, I use those same credentials to access her work communications. What I found was even worse than I'd expected. Email chains dating back 8 months discussing not just their affair, but their plans for afterward. Porter had promised Marin a promotion, a raise, and a future that apparently didn't include any concern for the collateral damage they'd cause. But the most interesting discovery was a series of messages about Hollis Luxury's internal politics. Porter was apparently involved in a scheme to redirect client funds through shell companies, skimming profits while the main business struggled. It wasn't quite embezzlement, but it was close enough to destroy his career if the information reached the right people. I copied everything to an encrypted drive, then began composing anonymous emails to Hollis Luxury's board of directors, their major clients, and several business journalists who specialized in corporate fraud investigations. I didn't send them immediately. Timing would be everything. Around noon, my phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized Porter's voice immediately. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. "I don't think we do." "You're making a mistake, Brooks. This doesn't have to get ugly. It's already ugly. You made sure of that." I'm trying to be reasonable here. Marin made a choice, and I respect that choice. But there's no reason we can't handle this like civilized people. Civilized people don't steal other men's wives. Nobody stole anything. She came to me. The casual cruelty of that statement hit me like a physical blow, but I kept my voice steady. Is there a point to this conversation? The point is that you're hurting Marin with these financial games. She can't access her accounts. Her car is missing and she's scared to go home. She should be scared. She committed fraud. That's ridiculous. Is it? How many of those romantic dinners did she pay for with my credit cards? How many hotel rooms? How many gifts for her new boyfriend purchased with money from our joint accounts? Silence on the other end of the line. Here's what's going to happen, Porter. You're going to take care of Marin now. You wanted her. You got her. But you got her without my financial support, without my house, and without any claim to the life I built. You can't just cut her off. She's your wife. She was my wife. Now she's your problem. I hung up and immediately called my phone company to change my number. Then I drove to the Harbor Club. The club's parking lot was full of expensive cars, and I recognized Porter's black Tesla in a reserved spot near the entrance. I parked across the street and waited. He emerged 2 hours later with 3 other men in expensive suits. They were laughing about something, probably congratulating Porter on his conquest. I watched him shake hands with his companions and walk to his car. I waited until he was pulling out of the parking lot, then followed at a distance. Porter drove to Marin's office building downtown. I parked where I could see the entrance and watched him go inside. 20 minutes later, they both came out. Marin looked tired, stressed, and was carrying a cardboard box, probably her personal belongings. They drove to Porter's penthouse building, and I followed them into the parking garage. The security was minimal, just a key card reader that I could easily bypass with the right equipment. But I didn't need to break in today. I just needed to observe. They took the elevator to the top floor, and I made note of Porter's parking spot, the building's security measures, and the various access points, information I might need later. As I drove home, I felt a strange sense of calm settling over me. For the first time in months, I knew exactly what I was doing and why I was doing it. Marin and Porter had made their choice, and now they'd have to live with the consequences. But I wasn't done with consequences yet, not by a long shot. That evening, I sent the first batch of anonymous emails to Hollis Luxury's board of directors. Just enough information to start an internal investigation, not enough to trace back to me. Then I poured myself a drink and sat on my back porch watching the sun set over Millbrook Harbor. Tomorrow things would start getting interesting. The next morning brought rain and the first signs that my plan was working. I was having coffee when my phone rang, my new number, which only a handful of people knew. Brooks, it's Linda Walsh from the bank. Morning, Linda. What can I do for you? I wanted to give you a heads up. Someone was here asking about your accounts this morning. A woman said she was your wife. When I explained that she wasn't authorized to access any of your current accounts, she became quite upset. I appreciate the call. Did she say anything else? She mentioned something about consulting a lawyer. I thought you should know. After I hung up, I smiled. Marin was starting to understand the scope of her situation. Good. Understanding was the first step toward consequences. I drove to my office and spent the morning monitoring the digital fallout from my anonymous emails. Hollis Luxury stock price had dropped 3 points overnight, and there were already rumors circulating on business forums about internal investigations. Around 10 a.m., Gary called. You need to get down here. He said, "Oh, what's wrong? Just get here in Brooks. You might want to bring a lawyer." I found Gary behind the bar at the Harbor Master cleaning glasses, with the methodical precision of a man trying to keep his hands busy. The tavern was empty except for two people sitting in a corner booth. Marin and a woman I didn't recognize. "She's been here for an hour," Gary said quietly. "Waiting for you." The other woman says she's a private investigator. I looked across the room at my wife. She'd clearly been crying, and her usually perfect appearance was disheveled. The woman sitting across from her was taking notes in a small notebook. "Brooks," Marin called out when she saw me. "Please, we need to talk." I walked over to their table but didn't sit down. I thought I made my position clear yesterday. "This is Jennifer Hayes," Marin said, gesturing to the other woman. "She's helping me understand my legal options." Jennifer Hayes looked like every private investigator in every movie. Middle-aged, sharp-eyed, and completely unimpressed by the domestic drama unfolding around her. "Mr. Carvin, I'd like to ask you a few questions about your recent financial activities. I'd like to see some identification." She showed me her license. Licensed private investigators specializing in matrimonial cases. Probably expensive, which meant Porter was funding this little fishing expedition. "What can I do for you, Miss Hayes? Your wife has expressed concern about the sudden disappearance of funds from your joint accounts. She's also mentioned that you've changed the locks on your marital home and disabled her access to shared property. All of which is perfectly legal under Maine law, assuming there's evidence of fraudulent use of marital assets. And do you have such evidence?" I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo I'd taken of Marin's credit card statements, hotel charges, restaurant bills, and retail purchases, all coinciding with dates when my wife told me she was working late or visiting family. The receipts show purchases for two people, despite her claims of being alone. Jennifer Hayes studied the information, then made more notes. "This is circumstantial. It's a pattern combined with text message evidence of an ongoing extramarital relationship. It establishes fraudulent use of joint funds to finance an affair." Marin's face went pale. "You read my text messages?" "I read text messages sent to a phone that I pay for on a plan that I maintain to a number that's registered in my name. Legally, those messages are as much mine as yours. You had no right. I had every right. Just like you had the right to make your choices. But choices have consequences. Marin, you're learning that now." Jennifer Hayes closed her notebook. "Mr. Carvin, I'm going to recommend that my client consult with a divorce attorney. This situation is beyond my scope." Excellent advice. After they left, Gary poured me a beer despite the early hour. "Want to tell me what's really going on?" I gave him the abbreviated version. He listened without interruption, occasionally shaking his head. 15 years, he said when I finished. "I'm sorry, Brooks. Don't be. I'm not. What are you going to do now?" "Whatever it takes." That afternoon, I received a call from David Chen. "We need to meet now." I found him in his office looking more serious than I'd ever seen him. "Marin hired Thomas Brennan," he said without preamble. I whistled softly. Brennan was the most expensive divorce attorney in the state, known for his aggressive tactics and his ability to extract maximum settlements from wealthy husbands. Porter's paying for it, has to be. Brennan's retainer alone is more than Marin makes in 6 months. David leaned forward. "Brooks, this is about to get very ugly. Brennan doesn't just win cases, he destroys people. He's going to dig into every aspect of your life, your business, your finances. He'll look for anything he can use to paint you as controlling, abusive, or financially manipulative. Let him look. I've got nothing to hide. Everyone has something to hide. The question is whether it's something that can be twisted to serve his narrative." I thought about the anonymous emails I'd sent, the surveillance I'd conducted, the various digital intrusions I'd made into Marin and Porter's communications. Probably not the kind of thing that would play well in court. What do you recommend? Fight fire with fire. Brennan plays dirty, so we play dirty, but we do it smart and we do it legal. Define dirty. David smiled that unpleasant smile again. Leave that to me. Over the next week, the situation escalated rapidly. Marin filed for divorce, claiming irreconcilable differences and seeking half of all marital assets, including my business. Brennan also filed a motion for temporary spousal support, arguing that I'd left his client destitute and homeless. I responded by providing evidence of Marin's affair and the fraudulent use of joint funds. David also filed a counter-motion seeking reimbursement for all marital funds used to finance her extramarital relationship, but the real war was being fought outside the courtroom. My anonymous emails had triggered a full investigation at Hollis Luxury. Porter was placed on administrative leave pending the outcome, and several major clients had already terminated their contracts. The company's stock continued to fall, and there were rumors of a federal investigation into their business practices. Marin, meanwhile, was discovering the social consequences of her choices. Millbrook was a small town where reputation mattered, and word of her affair had spread quickly. Her friends were avoiding her. Her family was asking uncomfortable questions, and her professional network was distancing itself from the scandal. I felt no satisfaction in her suffering, but I felt no sympathy either. The breaking point came on a Thursday morning when I arrived at my office to find Porter waiting in the parking lot. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in 2 weeks. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his silver hair was disheveled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. "We need to end this," he said as I got out of my truck. "I agree. You can start by leaving my property." "I'm serious, Brooks. This has gone too far." "Has it?" "Because from where I'm standing, it's just getting started." He stepped closer, and I could smell alcohol on his breath. "You're destroying innocent people." "Innocent?" I laughed. "Porter, you're many things, but innocent isn't one of them. Marin made a mistake. She's paying for it now. Isn't that enough?" "No. What do you want? Money? I can make this worth your while. I want you to understand something. You didn't just steal my wife. You stole 15 years of my life. You made me question my own sanity, my own worth, my own reality. You turned the person I trusted most into a stranger who was actively working against me. She never meant to hurt you. She meant exactly to hurt me. She just didn't mean to get caught." Porter's facade finally cracked. "Fine. You want to play hardball? Let's play hardball. I've got resources you can't imagine, connections you can't touch. I can make your life very difficult. You already have. The difference is now I'm making yours difficult too." He got back in his Tesla and drove away, but not before I saw the desperation in his eyes. He was scared, and scared people made mistakes. I was counting on it. 2 weeks later, Marin made her first major mistake. She agreed to meet me for coffee, ostensibly to discuss a settlement, but actually to try one last manipulation. We met at Coastal Grounds, a coffee shop downtown where half the town would see us together. She was dressed carefully, not too nice, which might suggest she was doing fine, but not too casual, which might undermine her claims of financial distress. "You look good," she said as I sat down across from her. "You look tired." She flinched slightly. "I haven't been sleeping well. Guilty conscience." "Brooks, please. Can't we just talk like adults? Like the people we used to be?" "We were never adults, Marin. We were children playing house. I was just the only one who didn't know it was a game." She reached across the table and touched my hand. I didn't pull away, but I didn't respond either. I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But we had good years together. That has to count for something. It counted for everything to me. It counted for something to me, too. Not enough, apparently. She withdrew her hand and tried a different approach. Porter's lost his job. Did you know that the investigation at Hollis found some irregularities and they terminated him? He can't find work anywhere in the industry. That's unfortunate. Brooks, he's talking about leaving town, maybe leaving the state. Good. He should have thought about that before he decided to wreck my marriage. What about me? What am I supposed to do? I studied her face, looking for any sign of genuine remorse or self-awareness. I found none. Even now, sitting across from me in a public coffee shop, she was performing. Every gesture, every expression, every word was calculated for maximum emotional impact. You're supposed to figure it out, I said, like an adult. I can't survive on my own. You know that. You survived for 33 years before you married me. That was different. I was younger then. I had options. You have options now. You chose Porter. Live with that choice. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. What if I told you I made a mistake? What if I said I wanted to come home? I'd say you're about 6 months too late. People make mistakes, Brooks, even you. My mistake was trusting you. I won't make that mistake again. Her performance was faltering now, real emotion starting to show through the cracks. So that's it. 15 years and you're just going to throw it all away. I'm not throwing anything away. You already did that. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Several other customers looked over at us. You're going to regret this, she said loud enough for them to hear. You're going to regret being so stubborn and cruel. Maybe. But I'll never regret learning the truth about you. She left without another word, and I sat there for another 20 minutes, finishing my coffee and letting the town gossips get a good look at me, calm, reasonable, unaffected by my arranged wife's public display. By evening, half the town would know that Maren had tried to reconcile, and I'd turned her down. The other half would hear about it by morning. That night, I put the final phase of my plan into motion. I'd spent weeks studying Porter's habits, his routines, his weaknesses. He was a creature of comfort who liked predictable patterns. Even in his diminished circumstances, he maintained certain rituals. His morning run along the harbor, his afternoon drinks at the harbor club, his evening meals at expensive restaurants. But his most predictable habit was his weekly poker game. Every Thursday night, he joined 4 other men at a private club downtown for high-stakes games that often ran until dawn. It was a boys' club tradition, a way for wealthy men to network and show off their success. Except Porter wasn't successful anymore. He was unemployed, under investigation, and rapidly running out of money. But he was too proud to admit it, too invested in his image to walk away from the game. I knew this because I'd been monitoring his communications, tracking his financial transactions, and watching his behavior for weeks. He was borrowing money to cover his losses, using credit cards to maintain his lifestyle, and making increasingly desperate attempts to find new employment. Thursday night, I positioned myself across the street from the private club and waited. Porter arrived at 8 p.m., right on schedule. He looked confident, well-dressed, every inch the successful executive. But I knew better. At 11 p.m., he came outside to take a phone call. I couldn't hear the conversation, but his body language told me everything I needed to know. Angry gestures, pacing, the posture of a man under pressure. He went back inside and the game continued until almost 2 a.m. When the players finally emerged, Porter was clearly agitated. He'd lost again, probably more than he could afford. I followed him home and watched him stumble into his building. Then I went home and waited for morning. The call came at 9 a.m. Gary sounding excited and slightly out of breath. "You need to get down here right now." He said Porter just showed up at the Harbor Master and he's completely wasted. He's been here for an hour drinking and talking about you. What's he saying? You need to hear this yourself. But Brooks, bring a recording device. I found Porter at the end of the bar, slumped over a whiskey and talking to anyone who would listen. He was still wearing his clothes from the night before, and he wrire of alcohol and desperation. "Thinks he's so smart," he was saying to Gary. "Thinks he can destroy me. But I know things about him. I know things about his business, his finances. He's not as clean as he pretends to be." I sat down 2 stools away and ordered a coffee. Porter noticed me but didn't stop talking. "There he is," he said loud enough for the handful of other customers to hear. "The great Brooks Carvin, the wronged husband, the innocent victim." "Morning, Porter." "Rough night." "Every night's rough when you're dealing with a vindictive sociopath." "Is that what I am?" He turned to face me, his eyes unfocused and reened. "You want to know what you are? You're a small man with a small life who can't handle that his wife found someone else. Better at what? Embezzlement, corporate fraud, destroying other people's lives. I never embezzled anything. The investigation at Hollis says otherwise. That investigation is based on lies, anonymous tips from someone with an agenda." I smiled. "Prove it." He stood up unsteadily, swaying slightly. "You think you're untouchable? You think you can hide behind your computers and your lawyers and your righteous indignation? I know what you've been doing. The surveillance, the hacking, the financial manipulation. You're not a victim, Brooks. You're a criminal. That's a serious accusation. Do you have any evidence?" "I have enough." "Then why haven't you gone to the police?" He didn't have an answer for that, which told me everything I needed to know. He was bluffing, desperate and drunk, and trying to salvage some dignity from a situation that had spiraled completely out of his control. "Here's what's going to happen," I said quietly. "You're going to finish your drink, go home, and sober up. Then you're going to pack your things and leave town. If you're smart, you'll take Marin with you and start over somewhere else. And if I don't, then things are going to get much worse for you. And trust me, Porter, you don't want things to get worse." He stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the calculation behind his eyes. He was trying to decide if I was bluffing, if he still had any leverage left to use against me. Finally, he threw a 20 on the bar and walked out without another word. Gary waited until the door closed behind him, then looked at me with a mixture of admiration and concern. "Brooks, what the heck are you doing? Winning? This doesn't feel like winning. This feels like something else entirely." Maybe he was right. But I was too far down this path to turn back now. And Porter had just given me the opening I needed for the final act. It was time to end this. The end came on a Saturday morning in October, 6 weeks after that first text message changed everything. I was in my workshop when David Chen called with news that would have devastated me 2 months earlier. "Brennan's withdrawing from the case," he said, effective immediately. "Why?" "Porter can't pay his fees. Apparently, his financial situation is worse than anyone realized. He's facing bankruptcy, possible criminal charges, and Brennan doesn't work for free." "What about Marin?" "She'll have to find new representation. With her income, she'll probably end up with a public defender or someone from legal aid." I I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt empty, hollow, like a man who'd won a war by destroying everything worth fighting for. Brooks, you still there? Yeah. What happens now? Now we finish this. Without Brennan's interference, we can push for a quick settlement. She'll have to accept whatever we offer or risk getting nothing at all. After I hung up, I sat in my workshop for a long time thinking about the man I'd been 6 weeks ago and the man I'd become. The transformation wasn't pretty, but it was complete. That afternoon, I drove to Porter's building. The doorman recognized me from my previous surveillance and waved me through without question. I took the elevator to the 20th floor and knocked on Porter's door. He answered wearing sweatpants and a stained t-shirt. His apartment, visible through the open door, was a mess of packed boxes and scattered papers. "Come to gloat?" he asked. "Come to talk?" He stepped aside and let me in. The penthouse that had once showcased his success now looked like a crime scene. Furniture was gone, probably sold. The walls were bare. The expensive art removed, only the essentials remained. "Nice place," I said. It was banks foreclosing next week. "Where will you go?" "My brother's got a place in Florida. Couch surfing at 44, living the dream." I walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the harbor. The view was spectacular, the kind of vista that wealthy men paid millions to enjoy. Soon, someone else would be enjoying it. What about Marin? What about her? Is she going with you? Porter laughed a bitter sound. "Marin's loyalty lasts exactly as long as your ability to provide for her. When the money ran out, so did she." "Where is she now?" "Her sister's place in Portland. Last I heard. Looking for a new job, a new man, a new life. She's good at that." I turned away from the window. "I'm sorry." "No, you're not. You're right. I'm not sorry it happened. But I'm sorry it had to happen this way." "Are you?" "Because from where I'm sitting, this is exactly how you wanted it to happen." He wasn't wrong. I'd orchestrated every move, anticipated every response, manipulated every outcome. Porter and Marin had made the initial choice to betray me, but everything that followed had been my design. "Why?" he asked. "You got what you wanted. Your wife is gone. I'm ruined. Your marriage is over. Why come here now?" "Because I want you to understand something. This wasn't about revenge. It was about consequences." "What's the difference?" "Revenge is emotional. Consequences are logical. You and Marin made choices, and those choices had predictable outcomes. I just made sure those outcomes happened faster than they might have naturally. You destroyed my career. Your career was already compromised. I just made sure the right people found out about it. You ruined my reputation. Your reputation was based on lies. I just exposed the truth. You cost me everything. You cost yourself everything. The moment you decided to steal another man's wife, you set this chain of events in motion. I just refused to be the only casualty." Porter slumped into one of the few remaining chairs. "So what now?" "You ride off into the sunset, victorious and vindicated. Now I try to figure out what comes next. Any ideas?" I looked around the empty apartment, thinking about my own empty house, my own uncertain future. Not really. Join the club. I left him there, surrounded by the wreckage of his former life, and drove home through the quiet streets of Millbrook. The town looked the same as it had 6 weeks ago, but everything had changed. Or maybe everything had just been revealed for what it really was. At home, I found an envelope that had been slipped under my door. My name was written on it in Marin's handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a brief message. I know you'll never forgive me, and I understand why. But I want you to know that I did love you in my own way. I'm sorry for the pain I caused, and I hope someday you can find happiness again. You deserve better than what I gave you. It wasn't signed. I read it twice, then crumpled it up and threw it in the trash. Then I retrieved it, smoothed it out, and put it in my desk drawer, not because I forgave her or because the words meant anything to me, but because it was the final piece of evidence in a case that was now closed. The divorce papers arrived the following Monday. Marin was represented by a legal aid attorney who'd clearly advised her to accept whatever settlement she could get. She was asking for nothing beyond her personal belongings and her car, which I'd already had retrieved from behind Murphy's Seafood and returned to her. I signed the papers without reading them carefully. After everything that had happened, the legal formalities felt anticlimactic. David Chen called that afternoon to congratulate me. "Clean victory," he said. "She gets nothing. You keep everything. And there's no ongoing financial obligation." Great. You don't sound happy. I'm not unhappy. I'm just done. That's normal. Divorce is exhausting, even when you win. Did I win, David? Because it doesn't feel like winning. You protected your assets, exposed your wife's infidelity, and avoided a costly legal battle. In my book, that's a victory. Maybe he was right, but victories were supposed to feel better than this. That evening, I sat on my back porch with a beer and watched the sun set over Millbrook Harbor. The same view I'd enjoyed for 15 years, but now I was seeing it alone. My phone buzzed with a text from Gary. "Poker game tonight at the Harbor Master. You in?" I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Yeah, I'm in." It was time to rejoin the world, to remember who I'd been before all this started. The man who'd built a successful business, who'd had friends and interests and a life beyond the wreckage of his marriage. That man was still in there somewhere, buried under weeks of anger and calculation and cold revenge. Maybe it was time to let him out. I finished my beer, locked up the house, and drove into town. Behind me, the house stood empty and secure. All its smart systems functioning perfectly, all its locks engaged, all its secrets safe, just like its owner. The story was over, the consequences delivered, the accounts balanced. What came next would be different, but it would be mine alone to write. And for the first time in months, that felt like enough.